As a way of introduction, I run our European sales for DICE. I've been with the business for almost 11 years now, quite a long time, during which time I'm sure any of you who've been in the recruitment game for that long will attest to the fact that things have changed enormously during this period and continue to do so. So one of the things that we want to talk about is how those changes in candidate behaviour, or perhaps we should just call more professional behaviour these days, should impact the way that you guys do things as recruiters, and hopefully we can share some insight on that. So as a way of starting off, I've got some statistics from PwC's annual Global CEO Survey. First one is that 63% of CEOs are increasingly worried about finding talent with the right skills. So this is something I'm sure you all appreciate from your own businesses, and at the very highest level, it's being recognised and discussed. You can see the upward trajectory, and that will continue. So the skills specifically, there's a research from the World Economic Forum from autumn last year showing that 9 out of 10 of the most in-demand jobs were tech. Jobs like cloud, security, UI, UX, data science, mobile development, jobs that I'm sure a number of you are recruiting for. So unfortunately, we are in the hardest part of the market, I think, and that's something that is a challenge on a day-to-day basis. Unemployment is at a historically low level, and tech is a particularly challenging place to be. A second statistic from that same survey is that 93% of CEOs recognise the need to change. Well, that's great, but I think there's no proven way of knowing what the right behaviour is. So everyone knows they need to improve, we just don't know what we're improving to. So we wanted to share some insight into how we think you might be able to get that edge, and that's not just based on skill, that's also based on understanding the nature of the market. So whereas we used to talk a lot about active versus passive, these days it seems to be much more of a spectrum of people and how engaged they are with potentially looking for a job. So the way we divide it up, you've got your applying and interviewing here on this side. So these are your typical active candidates, but outside of that you've got some people who are absolutely not going anywhere, and you've got some people who, if you put the right thing in front of them at the right time, they might be enticed. But that makes it challenging for you guys, because the old adage of posting a job advert and hoping for the best is only going to target these people in the dark blue around this side. So how do you get hold of those other people? And a lot of that comes down to timing. So understanding who you're trying to engage with at the right moment and what message to put in front of them. So what we've done recently, we've changed our approach quite considerably from focusing just on job advertising to thinking about how you can engage the more passive audience. And as part of that, we've grown our data science team, our BI team, and a lot of what we're doing is really data focused to try and work out the trends, I guess, ahead of the game. So we're an American headquartered business. A lot of the change within the tech market starts in Silicon Valley. So if we can try and identify what's happening in tech before it happens over here, hopefully we're at an advantage. So we wanted to share some insights from some surveys we've done recently, that hopefully will give you practical tips of how you can actually start to adapt your behaviour, and specifically the way you plan your week to make sure that you're as efficient as possible. So I'm going to start with my personal favourite time of the week, the weekend, and she is a happy lady walking out the door. What we wanted to start with, we get a lot of interest for posting jobs before the weekend. Make sure you get your job live so that you can prey on those candidates when they're looking for a job. I'm going to ask for some audience participation now, be prepared. Do you guys think it's important to get your job live on a Friday and make sure your job's live for the weekend? Is that a priority? Do you make sure you get jobs live before the weekend? Yeah? Some murmured yeses, I think. Well, maybe you won't anymore. Only 10% of job searches from our research happen over the weekend. Only 15% of applications happen over the weekend, and 15% of profile updates happen over the weekend. So actually, it's a really quiet time from a recruitment perspective. So we've got people trying to get jobs live to take advantage of people who are in their downtime going to be applying for loads of jobs, and they're not. They're actually just enjoying their weekend. I think people are quite accustomed to that feeling. I'm sure none of you, because you're all very happy in your jobs, of course, but that feeling on Sunday of dreading getting up and going to work the next day. And then that is confirmed when you come into work on Monday morning, and the challenges that you left on Friday are still there. And actually that is echoed throughout the themes of our statistics. 39% of all job searches happen on Monday and Tuesday. And interestingly, this is my personal favourite, 42% of searches happen between 8 and 10 a.m. on Monday and Tuesday morning. So not only are people looking for a job during the week, they're doing it the first thing they do on a Monday morning. They're coming into work, getting a cup of coffee and going and applying for some jobs, which is mental. So they're doing it in your time when they're sat at their desk, with a peak of 10 o'clock on Monday and Tuesday mornings. So yeah, I think that's quite interesting. 41% of all applications happen on Monday and Tuesday. Oh, I should go back to this. This is specifically a UK stat. Interestingly, we've looked at geographically, our business is an international business. We've got a number of different verticals, and we've looked at these stats internationally, and a lot of other countries are a bit more respectful than we are. So in China, the peak time is 7 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday. In Singapore, it's 10 p.m. on a Monday, so they have that same Monday dread, they just aren't rude enough to actually start applying for jobs when they're at the office. In the US, it's Wednesday morning first thing, but it's interesting to see the geographical variations. We seem to have particularly bad commutes or something that's making people really miserable on a Monday morning. So yeah. And 41% of applications happening on Monday and Tuesday. Also 40% of profile updates happening on Monday and Tuesday. So it's important to take this into effect when you're going to be planning your week. From my perspective, a lot of the people I deal with, they tend to have really hectic Mondays and Tuesdays. So Monday and Tuesday tend to be when a lot of team meetings happen, team setups. There's a lot of admin to get done. And actually what our analysis is suggesting is that those days should be kept more open so that you can deal with incoming inquiries. You can deal with applications that are hopefully landing in your inbox, and actually kind of flip your week around and leave a lot more of the administration to the later part of the week. It's also important that you've got your CV alerts if you are using job boards and searchable databases set up, because people are doing the majority of their activity of updating profiles on a Monday. So ideally what you'll do is you'll come into work on a Tuesday morning and you'll have lots of ready candidates, active candidates there to engage with. Another point we wanted to mention, and this is throughout, is the importance of having a visible brand. So I'll cover this a little bit later, the kind of importance of employer brand, and making sure that when candidates are looking, particularly if you are trying to engage that silver platter passive, the person who might be tempted, when they're tentatively first looking for a job, you want to make sure that your brand's visible. So we've covered our applying and interviewing. These are our Monday and Tuesday people. They're going to put themselves in your inbox. But what about everyone else? And that represents, from happily employed to career managers, about 75 to 80% of the audience. So if you are just posting a job advert, you're only going to get these guys down this end anyway. So what we've done is we've looked at a lot of the behavioural analysis to try and work out actually how can you find out whether a candidate's about to become active before they do. So how can you work out how they're going to jump ship? And there's a number of characteristics, whether they're updating their LinkedIn profile, updating their social, that might indicate someone who is on the edge. We've got a statistic actually from Boston Consulting Group that professionals these days are spending a huge amount of time in that research phase. So it increases depending on someone's level of education, but on the lower educated end of the spectrum, people are spending 8 weeks on average researching jobs before they actually apply for anything at all, which sounds like a hugely long period of time. And on the higher educated end of the spectrum, it actually increases to 15 weeks. So 15 weeks research before you've applied to one job. So what are they doing and how are they perceiving your brand during that 15-week period? But luckily there is a lot of information available on social these days that will help you to gauge someone at that important time. And we actually, on our database, I'm sure channels that you use also give you extra information with a bit of functionality. Our database tool, our sourcing tool, isn't just a CV database anymore. It also incorporates social data. We call it talent search. And one of the bits of functionality we have is a tool called Likely to Switch. So it takes into account 60 different behavioural factors to give an indication of who is more likely to be tentatively open to an opportunity than other people might be. So it will be things like how long they've been in a job for. You know, developers tend to stay in jobs for circa 2-3 years before they move on, so that might be an indication, as well as things like updated activity on their profiles. So we've made it through to the middle of the week. At this stage, your activity is going to start flicking more towards proactive search. So by Wednesday and Thursday, a lot more of your activity is going to be engaging passive professionals, as well as making sure that you're going back and covering the people who put their hand up, updated their profile on Monday and Tuesday. But the difficulty is, you guys are really short of time. Time is a very precious commodity to a recruiter. So how can you make sure that you're putting your attention, when you do get to the purely passive end of the spectrum, how you're going to make sure that you're engaging people, spending your time in the right way to engage professionals. Okay, I'm going to need a show of hands. Outside of LinkedIn, how many of you guys use social in your recruitment strategy? Lots of you, which is good. And that's what our research shows as well. So circa a third of people are using some of the main social profiles, platforms to advertise jobs, and larger volumes actually are using social channels other than LinkedIn, because LinkedIn's a bit of a given really, to actually reach out to channels like Stack Overflow and GitHub. But the problem is, there's so much information out there, and you guys are short of time. We did a social survey to our candidates to try and find out where they're hanging out, and this is the results. I mean, it's so many places, and this is specific to tech. So as I said, our business covers a number of other verticals, and in finance, for example, people are nowhere near as active in social as tech professionals are. Over 50% of tech professionals have more than 3 social and professional media channel profiles outside of LinkedIn. So they're really, really active. And that's a wealth of data that you don't want to miss out on. We also know that tech professionals are open to opportunities being put across to them through social media. So 95% of tech pros are open to being approached for jobs via social. We do get quite a lot of feedback from our candidates that the challenge is making sure that those jobs are relevant for them. I think the old days of being able to send a mass mail to a group of people, you know, a LinkedIn message or whatever, that's clearly a copy-paste job just doesn't work anymore. So that's the difficulty. You've got to try and make the message more personalised, but that requires time, and time is, as I said, a valuable commodity. So that's where employer branding loops back in. What you ideally want is that a professional already has a positive idea of you guys and your brand before you actually reach out to them, because that's going to impact their likelihood to respond to you. So 94% of professionals will research a company online before applying, and I mean the other stats are fairly straightforward. If your company doesn't have a good brand, they're going to find it out. You know, these days, so much of what we do is peer-to-peer reviews. You wouldn't go and book a hotel without first checking reviews. You wouldn't buy a product on Amazon that had a 1-star review. So why would people go and, you know, make such an important decision of where they're going to work without first checking reviews out? So it's really important that you are thinking about how you're going to put your brand out there, even for talent pipelining purposes. We have a tool that helps with putting messaging on social, whether that is from a job perspective or whether that's more from an employer brand perspective, pushing content out to the market. And it's a hyper-targeted tool, so you can make sure that the right eyes are seeing your messaging. I've got a slide missing there, but never mind, we're just going to crack on anyway. We've done quite a lot of campaigns with companies, and I want to share some insight on what's worked well with these LENGO campaigns. So a day in the life of, case studies are really engaging. Video is the preferred method. So if you have any kind of video, I know that requires your company to provide you with that most of the time, but video really engages tech professionals, and you've got a much higher likelihood of getting them to connect with what you're doing. And I think one of the other messages that we did a specific topic on employer brand last year, and a lot of it is about trying to make it potentially less glossy and corporate and a bit more personalised. So that's why I think things like case studies or day in the life of work so well, because it's real life. It's not meant to be glossy, it's meant to be a real indication of what that business looks like. So yeah, we've made it through Thursday, you're doing your proactive recruitment, and then on Friday, frankly, you need to be making sure that those meetings that you've moved from Monday, well, they're going to have to happen on Friday now, and you need to make sure you've planned, because by 8 o'clock on Monday morning, remember your advert needs to be live, because if it's not live, no one's going to find it during that peak period. So turning Friday into a bit more of an administrative day will help you to be prepared when you come back into the office first thing on Monday, and hopefully don't start looking for new jobs. So to summarise all of that, your beginning part of the week is when you're going to be really reactive. You're waiting for the candidates to come to you and you're making yourself available. By the middle of the week, you're starting to change your activity, maybe focusing on people who are tentatively suggesting that they might be open. And then by the end of the week, you're doing your proactive outreach and you're going to be planning for the following week. So just as a way of synopsis, this area over here, posting a job advert, that's really not enough anymore. If you do that, you're only reaching out to those active and applying candidates. And that's not the 80% of the market that you really want to be engaging with, that top tech talent that are not active in applying for jobs at the moment. So you need to really be thinking about how are you going to build your awareness, how are you going to get their interest, and how are you going to make sure that when they are in that 8 to 15 week researching phase, that they're finding you. That is it.